Controlling insects, mites, and diseases in retail greenhouses poses some special challenges. In the first part of a series of controlling pests in retail greenhouses, we're going to take a look at the three most common foliar diseases. There may be times that we are going to have to make pesticide applications in our retail greenhouses. So let's think about the criteria that we're going to need. First of all, because of our long hours of operation, we're going to try to stick with products that have short reentry intervals. Also, pesticides that have a strong odor to them that persists, that's going to be a real problem. We're not going to be able to use products like that. There should be little or no visible residue left after the application. Again, your foggers really help with that. Bloom safety is going to be critical because most of the time we're selling open blooms, so products that burn open blooms are going to be really an issue for us. As much as we can, we want to emphasize biorational and reduced risk pesticides, also with an eye to pollinator safety, because in a lot of cases, what's sprayed tonight may be in someone's garden tomorrow. And if these products have edible crops on the label, that's a big plus because generally in a retail setting, we've got ornamentals and edible crops being grown side by side. A couple of quick disclaimers since we're going to be talking about various pesticide products here for a while. One is that it's the grower's obligation to read and follow all the label requirements. So the pesticide label is the law. And I'm going to mention products I have a lot of confidence in, but there are certainly could be other products that will be safe and effective as well. One of our strategies should be for the retail greenhouse is to not have them stock many different pesticides. So as much as I can, I try to lump together products that will control multiple insects or multiple diseases at one time. So all of the products on the next few slides here will control all three of these: botrytis, powdery mildew, and aerial rhizoctonia, really the big three in terms of foliar diseases in greenhouses. Botrytis is the most common foliar disease in retail greenhouses, and it attacks all above ground portions of the plant and attacks just about all types of plants. So it is pretty much ubiquitous. You're probably familiar with the fact that as blooms go past their prime and they start to senesce, they become particularly susceptible to botrytis. Powdery mildew is a particularly stubborn disease to eliminate from your greenhouse, and even after we successfully kill the fungus, the damage on the leaves often persists. Aerial rhizoctonia often travels with botrytis. You often see them together. In this picture, you can see why rhizoctonia is referred to as a web blight. You don't always see the webbing, but very typical symptoms of rhizoctonia in the greenhouse is you have, let's say, bedding plant flats of impatiens, and then all of a sudden you see this round circle in the middle of that flat that just melts down. That is very common with rhizoctonia, and it's plants that are being grown at a high density where it's very difficult to get the surface of the soil and the plants down to the soil line dried out. Rhizoctonia can become a really big problem. So let's take a look at some products that meet our criteria that will control all three of these diseases. Firm is considered a biopesticide from the EPA. It has curative activity as well as protectant activity. Now, I also mentioned there that it's a translaminar systemic, and that probably deserves a little bit of definition. A translaminar systemic pesticide, when applied to the top surface of the leaf over the period of a few hours to a couple of days, depending on the product, it'll actually translocate through that leaf to the lower leaf surface. I think the advantage of that in a crowded retail greenhouse is really obvious to improve your spray coverage. Firm is approved for many edible crops. It has excellent plant safety, including open blooms. There's no odor with it, and there's just a slight residue. In fact, if you use a high-quality surfactant such as capsule, it can hide that residue altogether. It just has a 4-hour REI. So you can see a Firm is just about the perfect retail greenhouse pesticide. There's a group of biofungicides based on different bacillus products that we have tremendous confidence in. And you can see the trade names up there, and they all have just slightly different strains of the same bacillus type bacteria. One thing that we do need to point out is these are only preventatives. Now, they're very broad spectrum. They control a wide range of diseases, even beyond the ones we mentioned, but they are preventative rather than curative. They don't leave any odor behind or any residue. Excellent plant and bloom safety, labeled for all edible crops, and again, just a 4-hour REI. If being organic certified is important to you, all these products are also OMRI listed. sometimes a little stronger fungicide might be required. And I have two of them here, and they're similar. Both Mural and Pageant are dual active ingredients. So they have one product that is more of a knockdown, and the second product is a long residual preventative. So they're very broad spectrum. They have many different diseases on the label. They have a lot of edible crops on the label as well. And there's no odor, and if it's fogged, you won't see any visible residue at all. If you apply it as a wet spray, there's a minimal amount of residue. Most part, very good plant safety. We do know that both of these products can bleach some of the dark colored petunia blooms. So if you got wide open petunia flowers and the darker colors, the purples and so forth, you may see some white bleach spots on them. Other than that, they're excellent on open blooms as well. They do have a 12-hour REI. Now, I mentioned fogging. Pageant, BASF has not tested Pageant as a fog, so they do not recommend it that way. But you can purchase Pageant in a total release aerosol can, which might be really handy for the average busy retail grower during crunch time. Postiva is a new product that I wanted to mention. Like the other products I just showed you, it does have two active ingredients in it and also has that translaminar activity that we find so beneficial. Postiva is unique, and in addition to the fungal leaf spots that we were talking about controlling here, it also suppresses bacterial leaf spots, which unfortunately seems like we're seeing more and more of that on our plant material in recent years. It does have many edible crops on the label as well, so your vegetable transplants. And again, it has no odor, just a little bit of residue, but again, use capsule with it and you won't see that. Excellent plant and bloom safety. However, some of the early trials did indicate that some varieties of celosia were adversely affected by it in a 12-hour REI. Well, thank you very much for your virtual participation in this webinar. I wanted to point out, if you have any questions that you think of after the presentation is over, you can contact my teammates and myself at the email address below. Thanks again.